Thanks, Jamie. On on May 1st, a plane went down in the Amazon, and it was in Colombia. Thank you, ushers, for coming forward. They're going to pass buckets. You know what to do. We welcome your generosity, and thank you so much for it. And we just are so grateful to you and that you partner with us in the work here that God is doing at Before and Beyond. Plane went down on the Amazon. I'm going to get back to that story. And the pilot and a woman on board were killed, but her 4 children were not. And they were stuck in the Amazonian jungle in Colombia. And the Colombian army launched a search party, a huge, massive effort to try to get them. They projected messages down. They sent messages down to tell the kids to stay in one place. They did whatever they could to try to find them. They lost some of their rescue dogs in the process because the territory is just so hostile and impossible to navigate. The Colombian army has a code word that they use when a child has been recovered. And so on June 9th, the radio crackled, and one person said, "Miracle, miracle, miracle, miracle." All 4 children had been recovered alive. Yeah. After 40 days and nights in one of the most inhospitable countries in the world. And we know a miracle when we see it. We really do. We have different names for it, but we know when something should not have happened. Some of you know that by all accounts, you probably shouldn't be here today. You either shouldn't be alive or you shouldn't be here. We know the parts of our story that seem miraculous, even if we haven't figured out quite how to define it. As we launch a series on miracles this summer, we wrestled through it on our content team. We talked about what is the actual definition of a miracle. What qualifies? Because, what we want to do is just make a grid and then run everything through that. But we did have a great definition, I think. A divine manifestation of God's power that creates a reversal and reveals his character and purpose in our world. So the short definition is when heaven invades earth and creates beauty there. Because we could all probably admit, if we are looking around at the condition of our world and the fighting and the wars and the violence and the evil, that probably this isn't heaven yet. Of all the things we might disagree on in this room, that's probably one thing we could all sign off on. This isn't heaven, or we need a better God. This is not pretty, what we have here. And so we need heaven to invade our space here in order to create these gardens in the middle of war, in the middle of a battlefield. God comes in and creates a garden of beauty and life and hope and flourishing, and that's a miracle. Sometimes heaven invades earth to bring beauty. Sometimes heaven invades earth to separate us from evil that would otherwise destroy us. We see it all through the Bible. This is a God of miracles. We read about it, we sing about it, and I am just tired of not believing for it. That the God who was and the miracles that were is the God who is and the miracles that can be as we follow him, as we invite him to walk among us, as we invite him to mess up our space a little bit, as we invite him to step in to our lives in a new way. Jesus, when he comes to earth, he starts his ministry, and in Luke 4, he goes into the synagogue, they hand him a scroll, he unrolls the scroll, and he reads Isaiah 61. "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind and set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And then he does an unusual thing. Typically, the person who reads it is going to teach on it a little bit, but Jesus just sits down. And it says, everyone was looking at him, waiting for him to say something. just waiting for the teaching. Expound. Tell us what this means. Tell us how it's going to happen. And Jesus just says, today, this has been fulfilled in your midst. This is the Jesus that came to his church. This is the Jesus that came to our church this morning. Same Jesus. His mission is miracles. His mission is to heal the brokenhearted, proclaim good news to the poor, and free prisoners. Jesus wants to free prisoners. And this actually, in the Greek, doesn't mean he's going to clear out all the penitentiaries. This is, the word freedom here means a complete pardon, to set someone totally free. But the word prisoner means a prisoner of war, POW. Jesus came to address the fact that we are all, every single one of us, caught in a cosmic battle. 1 John 5:19 says, the whole world lies under the sway of the evil one. All of us are living in the tension of a battle of good versus evil. All of us are a pawn in the middle of that battle. There are plenty of areas in our life where we can see it, and there are lots of areas in our life where I think we can't see it, but it's true that we are always facing darkness in our world. John, in his creation story, said, light came into the world, and the darkness could not overcome it. And so our mission as people who carry the light of Jesus Christ is sometimes going to come up against darkness. Darkness. So we're going to look at two stories today where Jesus delivers people of demons. And not something we talk about every single Sunday in church. But I mean, let's go, right? We're going to start with him. We'll start with a littler miracle. Let's start with something that we can just all get our heads around. He puts the disciples in a boat. He's been ministering in Capernaum. He's got a lot of people around him. He needs to get some space. So they all get in the boat, and they go across the Sea of Galilee. And on the way, there's a big storm. And the disciples are afraid because they're going to die. This is going to crash their boat. And Jesus gets up, and it says he got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided, and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked the disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." So this miracle reveals both the power of Jesus to control the storm and the character of Jesus, that he cares for them, that he's going to take care of them. So we see these two things, that he is a superpower because he can calm nature, but then we see that he is a good superpower. He's not a villain with a bunch of power. He's a good superpower. And so then he pulls this boat up on the shore. He comes to Gerasenes. It's a little obscure village on the side of the Lake of Tiberias. It's just a little, there's not much written about it in history. It's a people group that's just kind of stuck there. It seems like they're probably not a big Jewish contingent, but Jesus stops there. And here's what happens. They sailed to the region of Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. This is such a visceral picture of what it means to be held captive by darkness. Like, this is the movie picture of it. This is the extreme picture of demonic influence in someone's life. This guy has no autonomy. He can't clothe himself. He has no friends. He is hurting himself. He's living by the tombs. And then he's even driven into isolation. This is a really big picture of demonic possession. It's a lot. He's got no home, no job, no family, no friends, no freedom. He's hopelessly stuck. He's a danger to himself and others. But this guy has something the disciples don't. Did you catch it? When the disciples experience a miracle, what is their first response? Who is this? When this guy gets a glimpse of Jesus, what is his first response? What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? The disciples have been with Jesus. They've been with him for 8 chapters now. They've seen miracles. They've seen deliverances. They've seen all kinds of things. And still they land in the middle of the miracle and they're like, I'm still figuring it out. I'm not sure who this guy is. He seems special. And this guy, who's like just a throwaway of society, stuck in the catacombs, looks at Jesus and immediately knows who he is. Why? Because darkness always recognizes light, always. Darkness knows light when it sees it. Darkness knows light when it hits it. And how does darkness respond? Don't torture me, because darkness knows it's in trouble. I think we sometimes look at this battle between light and darkness like they're diametrically opposed, and they aren't. Darkness never overcomes light. Darkness is in our world, but you know who is not the enemy in this story? The guy at the tombs, the demoniac. He's not the enemy. The war is not with him. He's a prisoner of war. Ephesians 6:12, your battle is not with flesh and blood. It's not with the people that you think are frustrating. It's not with all the arguments. It's not with all the people that seem like you can drive through downtown Portland and see, oh, there's a lot of people that seem oppressed. There's a lot of people that seem like they don't have any hope or any home. Our battle is not with flesh and blood. It is with darkness that wants to keep people shut up and hemmed in and stuck. Oh, I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I wouldn't want me yelling either. I'm sorry. The guy in Gerasenes is just a camping spot for a whole bunch of dark forces. He is just a container for them. Darkness doesn't care about him. Darkness doesn't have a plan for his life. Darkness doesn't have a strategy for him. Darkness is using him to terrorize a little part of the world, but darkness knows light when it sees it. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him, and they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them into the abyss. So legion here is, yes, the number of demons, but it also was a word that was really common that defined a group of Roman soldiers. A big group of soldiers was a legion. And so again here we see the language of war. The demoniac is a prisoner of war, and we don't shame prisoners of war for falling into prison. We don't shame them for being captive. They're just the part of a battle. The Gerasenes man is a prisoner of a bigger war than he ever dreamed existed. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. This is a really interesting part of the story to me, because Jesus has all the decision-making authority here. He decides what they do and where they go. He clearly understands that the powers they've flaunted in front of the town to keep them afraid, to keep them bound up, are no match for his authority in their lives. There's no match. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, please listen to this, friends. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. Transformation scares us. Jesus didn't just come to send demons into pigs. Jesus came to transform the life of someone who was bound. He was stuck in prison and couldn't get free without him. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. So here's a sad part of this story. These people who now have access to the one person who could set them free, they would rather hang out with the guy. They were fine coexisting with the demoniac, but they're not okay with the guy who sets the demoniac free. One reason could be because they were the ones tending the pigs and their pigs are gone. And that's a question. That's always a question. We want to be free, but how much will it cost me? What will be required in order for me to trade for my freedom? It's interesting to me as we see Jesus deal with them, as we see him just say, okay, I'll go away. And then the man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, return home and tell how much God has done for you. So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. Now this is a missed opportunity on Jesus' part. Jesus could have signed him up right now. He could have been the best before and after ministry story ever in the world. This guy could have been sharing his testimony all over the countryside. But Jesus doesn't ask him to get in the boat and become a disciple. Jesus asks him to go home and be a discipler. And this is such a dumb idea because this guy hasn't taken a class. He probably doesn't know scripture. He doesn't know the rules. He only recently knows how to dress. I mean, this is a bad idea. And yet Jesus is like, just go tell your story. Go tell the world that you once were bound and now you're free. Go tell the world that there is a prison and the enemy wants to put everyone in it, but there is a God who is light itself and he can set you free. This is what Jesus says for him to do. So Jesus leaves. And this is so interesting to me because why was he here? He gets in a boat, he goes from Capernaum, he goes to this weird little village. He does one thing. He meets with one guy, and then he gets in the boat and goes back. This is all he does there. He heals one guy who probably was the talk of the town in a really bad way for years. That's Jesus' whole mission. Someone's in prison. I got to get to the other side of the lake. Jesus pursues those who want to be free. I'm convinced of it. I'm convinced of it. It's too bad that we don't like to talk about it. Because I think we're afraid and we talk about, oh no, is it demonic possession or influence or oppression or whatever, and I don't really care. What I care about is we all are susceptible to darkness. All of us. Something in our heart can be held back and held captive, and we don't realize it. And Jesus wants to set us free. To me, that's the whole punchline. It's not, what do we do? Can Christians be possessed? Can Christians be oppressed? I don't know. I just know this. Jesus came to set us free, totally free. Isn't that just the prize? So, another story for contrast. This is out of Mark. Then Jesus and his companions went to Capernaum, back to Capernaum. And right away, Jesus entered the synagogue on the Sabbath and began to teach. Woo, the synagogue on the Sabbath, that's a lot like right here. The synagogue on the Sabbath. The people were astonished at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as the scribes. Suddenly, a man with an unclean spirit cried out in the synagogue. Now, this word suddenly is important because it means he was already there and he was being very normal. They didn't expect this. This is a good guy. This is, I was going to say like an usher or something, then I'm like, no, I'm not going to. This is someone who belongs in the synagogue. He looks the part, he's been the part, he plays the part, and suddenly he cries out with a demon. Oh, the story flips all of a sudden. And he says, what do you want to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked the spirit. Be silent, he said, come out of him. At this, the unclean spirit threw the man into convulsions and came out with a loud shriek. All the people were amazed and began to ask one another, what is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits and they obey him. And the news about Jesus spread quickly throughout the whole region. This guy is not living in an obscure village off the shore of a lake. He's in Capernaum. He's not foaming at the mouth and cutting himself in the catacombs. He's in church. He's not naked. He's dressed in his Sunday best. The story couldn't be more different than the other one except for that one line. I know who you are, the Holy One of God. This guy might look entirely different than our Gerasenes guy, but he is also a prisoner of war. He's just a prisoner of war who's able to pack it up more neatly. He's able to get through his regular life. He's able to make it work. He's able to look okay. He's able to keep it polite for society. But he is just as much a prisoner of war. So how do we deal with the fallout from a cosmic battle today? You probably see places in your history, or you felt it, where you've seen a life or death battle. You felt the presence of darkness, or you've seen the triumph of light. Most people I talk to can see the moments in their lives when they felt like a pawn. Most people, all four of my kids, I can point to a specific point in their life where I think they shouldn't be alive, where they had there was a big attack on their life, and I think there was a war over their life, their actual life. Dallas Willard says the 6 elements of the human condition are thoughts, feelings, and decisions, relationships, body, and soul. So these 6 areas, discipleship or spiritual formation is orienting all of these areas around the person and purpose of Jesus Christ. Thoughts, feelings, decisions, relationships, body, and soul. Oppression or darkness or influence is when any of these things feel held captive to darkness. Our thoughts, our feelings, our decisions, you can have thoughts that are chained up to fear. I lived that way for 25 years. I lived in such debilitating fear that I used to, when my husband would leave, I used to push furniture up against the front door because I was convinced someone was going to break in and kill me. I was debilitated by it. I've had thoughts tied up to anxiety or stress, all of those things, and then feelings that betray us. And we feel like I know what I should do, but then I'm making a decision that is against that. Perhaps you go home from a really hard day and you say, I don't need to have a drink. I don't need to have a drink. And all the while you're saying, I don't and I shouldn't, you're pouring a drink. The decision betrays the thoughts and the feelings because something's held captive. Relationships can keep us held captive to darkness. Relationships that push us the wrong direction. There are things that keep our physical bodies in captivity. Juneteenth today, this is why we made this a Freedom Sunday, because slavery is evil. It's evil, and we held the bodies of people captive. We had their autonomy and their hope and their futures in the hands of other people. And the day that fell is a day that light broke through darkness in our nation. And so we celebrate it. We honor it. There are lots of ways our bodies can be held captive. Addictions, things sometimes that even seem good, but if we're stuck, we have to have that in order to live. We look and say, am I in some way stuck in a dark place? And then our soul, sometimes we just know there's a soul sickness that I can't quite identify and I can't quite get out of. So, how do we deal with the darkness that wants to take some part of our heart captive? I want to see us believe for freedom in this church. I want to believe for freedom from oppression, from wrong thinking, from relationships that have us bound, from substances or addiction, from debilitating shame, from chronic debt or poverty. I want to see freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. We want to live in that. We want to be able to honestly sing, my chains are in the past. But sometimes we come into this place and hear the rattle of chains. And that's okay. There's no shame. There's just freedom for those who ask for it. So, how do we do it? First one, ask God to illuminate any areas in your life that are held captive to darkness. Ask him. Show up with your light. I'm open. I'm an open book. I want you to show me. Illuminate truth. Illuminate the areas of my life that are stuck in darkness. Thoughts, feelings, decisions, relationships, physical bondage, soul sickness. Ask him specifically about the lies you've believed or are believing about your right to be free. Ask him, show me the landscape of the battlefield inside my heart. Am I living in prison somewhere? And don't fear. Light always triumphs over darkness. Ask God to set you free. Total, complete liberation from darkness. Ask him for the miracle and the gift of freedom. And I mean it. Ask him for a miracle. Ask him for it right now, immediate. I want to be free. I want to be free of the things that are holding me back. I want to believe that you are who you say you are and that light triumphs over darkness. I want to be free. When I married my husband about 4 years ago, we were at a coffee shop here in Beaverton, and we were sitting outside enjoying a quiet summer day in Beaverton, and a woman started coming from across the parking lot, and from the minute she spotted us, she started screaming at us, and I don't know why she was mad at us, because she was screaming in another language. So we were just like, what is going on? And it was one of those sort of like goosebump raising moments of like, this is definitely darkness. And she passed by us, screaming at us the whole way, went into the coffee shop, didn't scream in there, but went in the coffee shop, and I sat out there and I just thought, she's not my enemy, but she is host to an enemy right now. And I don't have to be treated like that by the enemy. I don't. And so when she came back out just guns blazing, and she starts yelling at us. And I looked at her, and I put my hand up, and I said, stop. And she looked at me, and in perfect English said, you really think you're something special, don't you? And I was like, yeah. Because Jesus. And she walked away, quiet. And I often think of her and pray that she's been set free. And pray that somewhere, some search and rescue operation has stormed into her life and set her free. But in the meantime, light silences darkness. It can. We don't have to be afraid. Ask God to set you free. And then ask God to teach you how to stay free. This is the skill of freedom. Fill your mind with truth. Fill your soul with peace. Cut off the things that keep you in chains or keep you going back to the tombs. When I was living in debilitating fear, I called my father and I said, you have to pray for me. I can't live like this anymore. I can't. And he prayed the most powerful prayer over my life. And I felt a breaking of the chains. I felt it. I felt chains fall off of my life. I felt a certain peace that night that I hadn't felt before. And then I had to walk in it. And so for me, to walk free of freedom, or to walk free of fear, means no creepy movies, no creepy books. I can't expose my mind to things that pull me under. I can't. I'll go back. I know I'll go back to the chains if I do that. I'll go back to the tombs if I do that. There are decisions I have to make that are the skill of freedom, but it's worth it to stay free. So ask for God to teach you how to stay free, and then ask someone to stand with you in your fight for freedom. A partner or a friend or a pastor or a leader, or could I suggest Celebrate Recovery? They meet here every Thursday night. They have for years. They are experienced. They're pros at this, at standing with people who are trying to stay free of anything, of any kind of thing that you've got going on in your life, of thoughts that keep you bound up, maybe thoughts of self-harm or suicide, maybe thoughts that keep you stuck in debt, maybe thoughts that keep you held in relationships that are abusive to you, Maybe you are someone who you feel, I know I shouldn't speak like this to my spouse or my child. I know that it's hurting them, and for some reason I can't keep it from coming out my mouth to them. Freedom in the name of the Lord for you. Freedom to be someone who speaks light and shares light and spreads light. Freedom from the addictions that keep us chained and keep us away from the very best life God has made for us. Freedom from the things that cover over the imago Dei inside of us, the beautiful image of his own Son that lives inside of ourselves. Freedom. God is calling us to new levels of freedom because it's for freedom we've been set free. Because this is a freedom house. Because this is going to be a place where the miracles insist that light triumphs over darkness. Insist on it. I'm going to ask the worship team to come back, and we're going to do a response that is for, I think they were taken up. They are gone. We're going to do our own response maybe. Jonathan, thank you, friend. Yay. Oh, I really am. I am so thankful for these people because you do not want to hear me do a response song for you. I just want you to take a minute and ask Jesus, illuminate any areas of darkness in my life that you'd like to set free. Educate me, liberate me and set me free today. And then educate me on how to stay free tomorrow. And then help me collaborate with someone or some group or something that will help me stay free for the long haul. They're going to lead us, and then I'll come close us up.
God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness. On your faithfulness. Let's sing that again. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness. On your faithfulness. On your
dedications, and there were some kids over here, and there was a little girl, she's 3, I think, and her name's Luna, and she was standing by the stage, and she just could not stop dancing to all the music. She's just like twirling and spinning and dancing, just perfect. And I watched it and I thought, when do we lose that? When do we stop being that in the presence of Jesus? When do we start fixing ourselves up for him? Well, I better be a grown-up. I better be mature. I better keep it together. When do we start that? I don't know the answer. It's probably a different sermon altogether. But I'm going to leave the question with you. You take one question home with you today. Let it be, when did I stop being as free as Luna? When did I stop dancing at the stage? When did I worry about what people would think? When did I start to believe that I wasn't enough to come before him any way I wanted to? There's going to be prayer people up here. If you'd like to pray for anything in your life that you feel like there's just this one thing where I feel like there's darkness and I want it to have the light of love and grace come into that. They're going to be here to pray with you if you'd like that. But I want to speak a benediction over you. And if you would like to receive that, would you put your hands out in front of you? May you be women and men who live, breathe, and distribute freedom in your world. May we be a church where chains fall at the sound of the name that is over every name. May we leave this place, but take the Spirit of the Lord with us to heal hearts, bind wounds, and declare that the mission of God is free at last. And may you be people with the radio in your hand saying, miracle, 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 miracle. In the name of the one who sets us free, free, free indeed. We love you. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.